Hello and welcome to the Wellness Connection podcast. I'm your host, Fiona Kane. Today, I want to introduce you to the idea of glimmers. So, most of us have heard of triggers, and people talk about triggers a lot in our society in regards to their mental health. However, you don't hear the term glimmer, and I think glimmer is just as important, if not more. And so, I think it's worth exploring that a little bit today. Now, in a previous episode, I think it might have been last week's episode actually, I was talking about capacity building for mental health. So I will touch on that a little bit more today as well, because that's kind of along the lines of this topic. So, in regards to glimmers versus triggers, so just a quick definition of what they are for you. Excuse me if I am going to read for a moment, but just to give you the breakdown of what they are. So, triggers are sensory reminders that can trigger a negative emotional response. So, it might trigger fear or anxiety or sadness or something like that. And it's due to some past experience you've had, may or may not be a traumatic experience, but some past experience that has a negative feeling for you. And it could be smell of a perfume, it could be lots of things. So that's what a trigger is, and they activate the sympathetic nervous system, which is that fight or flight response in our body. So glimmers, what a glimmer is kind of almost the opposite of that, but it's what it is. It's at small positive moments that can help regulate your nervous system. So essentially, these glimmers cue feelings of safety and connection, and they activate the ventral vagal pathway, promoting relaxation and connectedness. Right. So, a short form way of saying that is essentially they relax you and make you feel calm and make you feel good, and so they would put you into your parasympathetic nervous system, which is the rest and digest system, which is where you need to be most of the time. So, glimmers are really important. And I think that the problem is in our society, what I see a lot of is people just all about the triggers. Oh, I'm triggered by this, I'm triggered by that, and all just going around trying to completely avoid triggers and completely avoid pain, that sort of thing. And first of all, that's not a good idea to completely avoid any kind of pain or discomfort. Our capacity building actually comes from experiencing pain and discomfort. Like, I don't mean go out and deliberately do horrible things or go out and deliberately harm yourself, but just the challenging things of life, like going for job interviews and getting a job, and going on dates, and managing your relationships, and just being part of the world, right? Looking after your health, all the things in life uh, that life is, and learning to drive, all those things. They are all. That's what life is made of, and so it's really, really good to capacity build and make sure that you can do those things, and ongoingly you can do those things, and so when even if you are triggered, right? Now, there might be situations where maybe you have a really severe mental health issue or severe PTSD, in which case, obviously, you can take what I'm saying, but then go and talk to your therapist or someone about it. Do what's right for you, okay? Because we've always got to manage ourselves. But hang on for a moment. Sorry about that. So, yeah, obviously, whenever you listen to any of my podcasts, you take what's right for you, don't do what's not right for you. If you feel like you need more support, get more support, whether or not it's with me or whether or not it's another practitioner. If you've got really severe mental health issues, so you really should be working with a therapist. I'm not a therapist, so work with a therapist or someone who's an appropriate person for you. Also, actually, hypnotherapy works quite well for people who have triggers and when they've got PTSD, those sorts of issues. So anyway, work with an appropriate therapist for you in regards to that. But just in general in life, I mean, just the triggers of just life, right? So there's triggers of war or horrible, really horrific things, and there's triggers of, oh, that takes me back to when that horrible thing happened to me that I feel bad about, or that I feel sad about, or I feel ashamed about, that most people experience because we all have life experience, right? And those triggers, like, I don't think you should go out of your way to completely avoid all of those triggers, because it is useful to get used to feeling uncomfortable sometimes. It's okay to feel uncomfortable, and know that you can actually survive it. Know that you'll be okay. And that's getting back to what I was talking about before, capacity building. So, the point of capacity building, whether this is for you or for your children, capacity building is ensuring that we can survive this thing called life until we don't, because we're only one way out, right? But so that we can survive and thrive and have a good life until whenever, until time comes that we're not supposed to be here anymore. And to do that, we have to actually capacity build, So right from birth, when babies, I've talked about it before, babies learning to walk, crawl, talk, all of those things. If you just spoke for them forever and never let them talk, they're not going to capacity build, right? And if you just carry them everywhere for their whole life, they're not going to capacity build. They're going to learn how to walk, right? So it's the same thing that we need to do throughout our lives, capacity build. But also, what we need to do is we need to keep doing things. So there might be something that you might have put yourself out of your comfort zone a lot, say when you were younger. And then as you get older, you get more into a comfort zone, and don't stretch outside of your comfort zone. And then your comfort zone gets a bit smaller and smaller. And suddenly you don't like to drive as far, or, you don't like to go as far, or whatever it is. So I would suggest to you that you would put yourself out of your comfort zone all throughout your life at different times. Just sort of regularly just do. It doesn't have to be a huge thing, but some sort of small thing that kind of pushes you out of your comfort zone, so that you're just continually affirming to yourself that you are quite capable of managing something that's a bit stressful, a bit challenging, whatever, and that you're keeping that capacity. Because so not only do we need to build capacity, but we need to maintain it. And life happens to us, so sometimes it sort of it goes backwards a bit, because you go through a grief, you go through a trauma, you go through an illness, or something happens in life, and sometimes you have reduced capacity when that happens, and that's okay while you're rebuilding and whatever it is. But essentially, life takes its toll on you. And if every time it takes its toll on you, you just take a step backwards, a step backwards, a step backwards, and then smaller, 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 obviously your capacity shrinks and shrinks and shrinks, and your life shrinks and shrinks and shrinks. So we do need to kind of, at a certain point, just put ourselves back out there and build that capacity again. Same as like a muscle, right? If you go to the gym all the time, you build up the muscles. If you stop going, the muscles, you won't have as much muscle, and the muscles will atrophy. They'll get smaller, and so you'll, if you want to have the strength, which I recommend that you do want to have, because you want to have a healthy life and be well as you get older. And I've had episodes where I've talked about this and how important that is. Well, then you'll go back out and you'll do something to sort of build the muscle again, sort of capacity building, right? So it is important that we do expose ourselves to things that trigger us, and then in an appropriate way. If you've got severe mental health issues, obviously get support around that. But if it's in general situation, general life, for general people with our normal kind of anxieties and stresses and things like that, you can just regularly challenge yourself and regularly put yourself in a bit of an uncomfortable situation. So it might even be, because sometimes my clients say to me, "Oh, I wouldn't go and sit in a cafe on my own or a restaurant on my own." Well, go and do that. It's a really simple thing to do. Go and experience what it's like to go and have dinner on your own in a restaurant, or have coffee on your own in a cafe, or whatever it is, or the cinema on your. I go to the cinema all the time on my own, and concerts and things like that. So it might be things like that, whatever it is for you, but capacity build. Or it might be, look, I don't really like driving outside of this range, but maybe just challenge yourself a little bit further. And so say, okay, I'm going to go to do this thing that's, I'm going to go and do my shopping in the next suburb over, whatever it is, but capacity build. And you do that by putting yourself outside your comfort zone a bit, and because of continuing, like building that muscle, right? So getting back to glimmers. So I want to talk to you a little bit more about glimmers. So, so essentially, getting back to it, glimmers are these positive sensory moments that activate the parasympathetic nervous system, and so that's that sort of rest and digest system, and it promotes feelings of safety, connection, and well-being, and so this is something that it's a really good idea to have plenty of these in your life as well, and that's the thing too. It's about getting the balance, because what we do is we only focus on triggers, and we don't always notice or pay attention to glimmers. So it's just like, if you pay attention to the glimmers, they'll kind of help counteract things and help keep your body in that parasympathetic rest and digest mode more often than not, right? So here it gives examples of what a glimmer is. So it's like patting a dog or a pet, right? Just patting animals, and smelling a favorite fragrance. So it could be, like I actually, when I smell frangipanis, it reminds me of my mum and my grandmother. And even though it's kind of sad, it also is kind of beautiful as well because it reminds me of beautiful moments when they were alive, or seeing a beautiful landscape, eating your favorite food, looking at a photograph from someone you love, feelings of warmth in the sun, or the breeze on your skin, those kinds of things. And so they help regulate your nervous system, which is really, really important. And they also, they reduce stress, they build resilience, all of those things. And it comes back to, this kind of goes hand in hand with having, say, like a gratitude diary or a gratitude practice. It's the same sort of thing as in what you're doing is you're actively looking for beauty. You're actively looking for joy. So it might be just in that moment in the car and a favorite song comes on and you're singing along to your favorite song. And then just in that moment, you just experience this joy of listening to or singing along to this song. Or it could be you're having a laugh with someone and you just kind of all of a sudden you just like you observe yourself in the moment having a laugh with your hubby or your best friend or whoever it is. Or sometimes I'll be sitting and I'll drink a cup of tea. You know, when you get to your cup of tea at the right moment, I usually get to it and it's too cold, or I'm trying it, it's too hot, But when you get to it, it's at that perfect moment, and you sort of sip that cup of tea, and it's like, ah, yes, just the perfect temperature, just the perfect taste, whatever. It's those kinds of things, right? And it's important that we slow down enough or kind of just be observant enough to look for those. And especially when we are feeling down or we are struggling with our mental health. Because the problem is the more we're feeling down or the more anxious we are, the more we've got that sort of stuff going on in our lives, the more we kind of just zone in on looking for triggers and bad things and scary things. And we're kind of like, looking constantly, just like looking for the danger, 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 right? So we stay in that kind of fight or flight. And not only that, but not only are we looking for danger, but we often only see, when we're in that kind of negative mind frame, we only see confirmations that the world's bad. So we look around and kind of say, oh, that person doesn't like me and that person's ignoring me and this is that. And a lot of that is kind of just stories. Some of it might be true because not everyone likes you, whatever. But a lot of it is kind of stories that we make up, though. We kind of, the person's just busy or they didn't actually see you. Like I wear glasses, and if I happen to be walking along without my glasses on and don't see you, it's not personal. If I'm not wearing my glasses, I probably didn't see you, right? And also, I've got a blind spot, so quite a big blind spot. So it's a good chance that I didn't see you, not that I'm trying to ignore you, But there's things like that where we can kind of go, that person had a funny look on their face. They don't like me. Well, I've been told that I have kind of resting bitch face, right? So you might think that I'm angry at you or whatever, and I'm just kind of just sitting there and I didn't even see you, or like so what I'm trying to say is that what we do is we make up stories in our mind about what's happening with the other person, what's going on. Someone hasn't replied to your text and you sort of think, oh, they hate me or they're not talking to me or whatever. And, sometimes it's situations where it's friendships falling apart or whatever, but often they're just really busy, and it happens to me all the time. So if you're a friend of mine and I haven't replied to your text me again. I'm really sorry. Like, it's honestly, it's what will happen is, I'll kind of go, oh, look, I've just got to get these things done. And then by the end of the day, by the end of the week, whatever, I've had so many other messages that I just forgot and didn't get back to it, right? But what we do in our head is we kind of make up a story. Oh, Fiona doesn't talk to me anymore, or Fiona doesn't like me. It's that kind of thing. So the problem is that when we are in that negative mode, what we do is we look around for confirmation of what we believe. And what we believe is that we're unlovable, or that everyone's out to get us, or everyone hates us, or the world's inherently bad. Whatever the story is we're telling ourselves. And that's why something like, actively looking for glimmers is really, really important part of kind of balancing things out. And it is something that I did, and I have talked about this quite a few times before, but it's just worth mentioning again. When my mum was at the end of her life and she was in palliative care, I made a real effort in regards to this, because everything felt bad, right? And it was really just incredibly hard time. And like, everyone eventually goes through it, or most people go through this experience. And you know, it is really tough, right? So it is what it is. I'm not kind of making it out to be anything more or less than anyone else experiences, right? But it was really tough. It was a really tough time. It's obviously really sad and really stressful and all those things, right? And you put your life on hold and you're running around and you're doing lots of travel and all the rest of it. And what I did in that time is, and lots of medical stuff, right? So lots of medical stuff that's confronting and challenging, and. So what I did is I looked for glimmers. So I would go out for my walk, and I'd go out and walk while Mum was sleeping, and I'd go and walk around near Gosford Hospital, and I would look for birds. I would look for butterflies. I would listen for bird sounds. I'd pay attention to, like, look what the trees look like. Look at the flowers. Oh, look, there's a frangipani. Whatever it is, but I would pay attention. But I also paid attention when I was with Mum, because there were moments that we just had joy. Like, I'd put a song on and we'd sing along to a song for a little while, right? When she was still able to do that. And, so I'd kind of like just like tuck away those little moments in my mind that, it's not all bad. There's good things happening here as well. And it's often the truth, actually, that beauty and beautiful moments happen within what you'd otherwise consider to be really horrible moments, or they happen around it, as in you might have a really horrible moment, but then, or a horrible experience, but then someone will come in and care for you and help you or be kind, So sometimes they happen within the challenging time, and sometimes they happen sort of on, afterwards, or in a different way. But essentially, if we are aware of glimmers, if we're aware of those as we are of triggers, we will actively look for them. And it's a really good idea to do that, because it's balancing the scales. It's not all about triggers, it's about glimmers as well. It's actually actively encouraging yourself to look for something that's positive, and that is exactly why a gratitude practice works, because a gratitude practice works in exactly the same way. Because a gratitude practice forces you to sort of look around in your life and go, oh, okay, whatever your practice might be, but just say like 5 positive things that happened today, or 5 things that I've got going on for me in my life that are good, or 5 things I can see here, whatever that are beneficial and helpful and good in my life. And when we do look for, what we have, we start to notice what we have, because, I live in Australia and I've got hot water, I've got electricity, I've got the internet. I've got a husband who loves me, and we've been together for 35 years. I've got all of these things in my life. I've got great sisters and great family. I've got all of these great things. So I could say, well, I don't have this and I don't have that, and my mum's gone, and blah blah blah, and negative, negative, negative. And while there's a lot of things, we could all list a whole bunch of things that we've lost, or a whole bunch of things that we don't have, or all the challenges in our life. But it's also important to acknowledge all the good things. And, if you have your own bed, your own home, or somewhere to sleep tonight, someone who loves you, and some hot water, you're doing all right, and you're doing better than most of the people in the world, actually. So, the point of Glimmers is to kind of counteract that trigger thing, and know that, it's really important that we actively look for those things. So, that, like I said, that little bit of breeze on your face, and that, when I open the window at night and get into bed, I listen for the frogs, because we have frogs here. So, I always sort of, my husband and I will say, oh, there's the frogs, right? And I love listening to them at night, as long as they're not super loud. But, things like that. So it's just noticing the things that you have, noticing the things that are beautiful, and noticing the things that are positive. So there's this negative person that I work with that I don't like, and I'm struggling with this person, but hey, there's this really nice person that I work with, or that's a neighbor, or that's a friend. And so I would encourage you to be aware, just as aware of glimmers as you are of triggers. Be okay with being triggered sometimes as well, and learning that you can cope with that a lot better than maybe what you think you can. So it is important to make ourselves uncomfortable sometimes, put ourselves outside of our comfort zone a bit, and really just sort of keep that capacity by kind of constantly just, making sure that we're doing enough, that we keep our capacity, maintain our capacity, build our capacity, as for our mental and physical health. But yeah, also just any kind of gratitude practice, and looking for glimmers, so we can manage our nervous system, and counteract that triggers all the negative things in life, because life has both. Life has good and it has bad, and it has, opportunities, and it has challenges, and it has, happiness, and it has sadness, and all the things, right? And a full life is one where you will experience all of those things, most of those things, right? And what we sometimes do is we sometimes, because it can be painful and because it can be difficult, what we sometimes do is we kind of opt out, or we try not to experience life, or we overprotect ourselves too much. And there might be times where that's appropriate, like when your capacity is a bit lower and maybe you've just had a challenge in life. Yeah, okay, fine, be a bit more protective of yourself, but not all of the time. Anyway, I hope that that was useful to you. Please like, subscribe, and share, and rate and review. And I will see you all again next week, where we have real conversations about things that matter. Thank you. Bye.